Good day. This is Group 4, presenting our final debate. Are genetically modified organisms necessary for sustainable development? Our argument is no. At the beginning, sustainable development first brought up by Brundtland Commission in their report on our common future in 1987, which was defined as development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. In other words, we say sustainable development includes the development of environmental balance, social progress, and economic growth. And what is GMOs? You might have heard a lot about pest-resistant crops, golden rice. These are all belong to the work of genetically modified. GMOs stands for genetically modified organisms, which are living beings that have their genetical change in some way by using genetic engineering technology. In the following parts, we will explain the governance, safety, and social issues as well as alternatives to GMO products to tell you why GMOs are not necessary for sustainable development.
Why are GMO popular? From the viewpoint of sustainable development, we shall go through the benefits of GMO at first. First of all, GMOs are good to producers and consumers. It improves the quantity and quality of crops. In 2018, there was a research concluding that the agricultural yield of the genetically modified corn has increased over the past 20 years. Also, according to Table 1, we can see that crops has an average increase in agricultural yield by 22%. GMO foods also increase the plant adaptability to the harsh environment, like the virus-resistant Hawaiian papaya, which reduce the crop losses and require fewer phytosanitary products compared to the conventional ones. The reduction of losses by the pests, viruses, and weeds that compete for the soil nutrients indirectly increase the final yield when compared to the conventional ones. Apart from improving the crop yield, GMO foods are also good to the environment. In Table 1, it shows that GMO technology has reduced the chemical pesticides used by about 37% on average. On the other hand, GMOs are also act as the bioremediation, which means creating organisms that degrade the waste material into less toxic or the non-toxic forms. For example, the yellow poplar, the genetically modified ones allows it to grow in normally toxic levels of ionic mercury, which the modified poplar converts to the much less toxic elemental forms of mercury than the traditional ones. Furthermore, GMOs are also good to human health that could make them beneficial for health or for preventing the diseases. Foods can be modified by adding vitamins into crops for added nutrition. For example, golden rice, which is developed to contain the beta-carotene supplement, which is a precursor to vitamin A. An example of nutraceuticals are tomatoes, with the increased lycopene, which is an antioxidant, a useful agent in the prevention and treatment of prostate cancer and heart disease. Last but not least, GMO also encourage creating a new technology. Let's take milk as an example. The ability to genetically modify animals in order to produce pharmaceutical in the milk has been one of the most innovative applications of genetic modification techniques. Medicines or vaccines produced in milk could be manufactured and distributed cheaply and made more accessible to people around the world. On the other hand, there are transgenic plants that have been developed to immunize against hepatitis B and Norwalk viruses, both of which are of substantial concern in the developing countries. Hence, GMO technology is developed in our food in order to avoid the difficulties in injecting vaccines or taking medicines, especially in the developing countries. The above reasons definitely explain why GMO is a prevailing technology worldwide.
Speaking of governance issue, we mainly divide them into two parts. One is external governance and the other is corporate internal governance. Firstly, let's take a look at the US, EU, and Japanese government's management system for GMOs. We can see that their theoretical basis and regulatory agency are different. The following table gives a brief comparison. We can notice that the United States GM labeling system uses voluntary identification system, so to some extent, this policy is used by agricultural biotechnology companies, making it impossible for consumers to know which foods are GMOs. There are other problems in the US regulatory system for GMOs. Firstly, we need to understand two concepts. One is the patent law. Patent law stipulates that seeds are essentially classified as intellectual properties. Another concept is the substantial equivalence, which has been a central tenet of the industry argument for less testing and regulation. There is a contradiction between them. We can take Monsanto as an example. They made the claim that one of their products need no additional field testing because they were essentially the same as non-GM products. So their effect on both consumers and the environment would therefore be substantial equivalence. At the same time, they claim that the special properties of GM organisms render it unique enough to warrant a patent. This substantial equivalence argument forms the basis of the FDA's policy of allowing GM products without pre-marketing approval. This obviously also led to some companies using loopholes through evaluation or outbound research that is beneficial to them. We can use stakeholder analysis to analyze GMO. We can find that GM technology company is a direct beneficiary. This patent owner can get economic benefits, so they naturally support GMOs. At the same time, the pursuit of interest will make them ignore internal corporate governance. From the previous example, we can easily see some problems in the internal governance of enterprises. On the one hand, large biotech companies like Monsanto lack internal control and good social responsibility. On the other hand, large agricultural biotechnology are not opposed to all forms of regulation. When it suits them, they have used their close relationship with various government agencies to pursue legal means of ensuring their products get to the market. So, in conclusion, in the external supervision, there are still serious shortcomings in the legal supervision of GM food, such as the relevant laws and regulations are not sound enough. For companies that master GM technology, they don't have legally guided and self-constrained, which resulting in a non-optimistic monopoly. Therefore, no matter from which aspect of ESG, GMO is not yet controllable. Maybe it's unnecessary for our current sustainable development.
One reason our group believes that GMO is not necessary for sustainability is because we consider the potential hazards of GMO. Well, in this part, I will show the specific hazards of GMO and give some examples. First, allergenicity. I believe some of you guys heard about Starling corn controversy. Starling corn is a brown name for BT corn, a genetically modified yellow corn. The corn contains a gene that codes for a pesticide called Bacillus thuringiensis. However, the modified corn has only been approved for use in animal feeds, not for human foods. There are two cases about Starling corn. Once in 2000, the newspaper report surfaced that Starling corn had found its way into taco shells. Kraft Foods, who sells the shells, initiated a voluntary recall of all taco shell products. The other is a woman named Grace Booth, who had gone into anaphylactic shock after eating 3 enchiladas made with corn tortillas. The question is that how let's see this slice. The left is GMO corn, the right is non-GMO corn. Pollen from genetically modified plants can pollinate non-modified crops in nearby fields by cross-pollination. Second, horizontal gene transfer. Horizontal gene transfer is stable transfer of genetic material from one organism to another without reproduction or human intervention. Some of the considerations on potential impacts of HGT from GMO include the adverse effects on the health of people or the environment, include enhanced pathogenicity or virulence. There are also some unpredictable and unintended effects because many organisms are yet to be identified. Genomic disruption. The gene technology could lead to genomic instability and an increase in horizontal gene transfer and the long-term. Globally, GM plants constitute the great majority of GMO released into the environment. The introduced genes confer herbicide tolerance or insect resistance together with a range of accessory genetic material. Future GM crop plants may include genes for therapeutic uses. The use of antibiotics has imposed strong selection pressures for bacterial resistance and has compromised therapeutic. The last one is the loss of biodiversity. A major concern of genetically modified organisms is that they will cause reduced genetic diversity of plants and the animals' environment. So, how will GMO affect genetic diversity? One possibility is that GMO may crossbreed with wild plants or animals. A second is that favorable traits could allow GMO to take over a population. One example is graping bent grass used on golf courses. Let's see this picture. Researchers tested wild plants at 39 locations surrounding the GMO bent grass farm and found seeds with genetic modification at 13 of the 39 locations. Fitness advantage leads to the engineered gene being maintained in the population and thus reduce the genetic diversity of the wild species. In addition to crossbreeding, GMO can also affect genetic diversity through uncontrolled growth of a genetically engineered population. The example is the Bounty salmon. Bounty introduced two sequences of DNA into authentic salmon and allows this fish to develop at a dramatically increased rate. Allows them to take resources away from non-GMO relatives. From the picture, we can see the GM salmon are almost 3 times the length of non-GM salmon.
Apart from the biological risks, there are also socio-economic issues with GMOs. Firstly, who owns the GMOs and why does it matter? And do those who own GMOs develop the biotechnology for food security or mainly for profit? And lastly, the predatory aspect of patenting of GMOs. As we can see, there are many different countries growing GMOs, but who owns them? Growing them does not mean owning the rights to them. The US is currently a top producer of GMOs, having a global dominant share in the food market. And other developing countries would want to compete with them, but they would need to sell GMO crops as well for the advantages. So they need to develop their own biotechnology, but that's too expensive. Hence, they pay multinational corporations who own the rights to GMOs for licenses to grow, which furthers the wealth gap between poor and rich countries and acts as a barrier for sustainable development. Let's take Thailand as an example. As a developing country who has GM crops, they have 15 events approved for maize and soybean, and all of them are licensed from Syngenta, Monsanto, and BASF multinational corporations. On the other hand, for developed countries like Singapore, they have 38 events, and out of all 38, they are all licensed from Monsanto, Syngenta, Bayer, Dow, DuPont, BASF, all multinational corporations. And here comes the issue of the privatization of our global food supplies. In the US alone, 74% of GMO patents are held by the private sector, and 41% of it is held by 5 major corporations, including Syngenta, DuPont, Monsanto, Bayer, and Dow. Clearly, the multinational corporations hold a large amount of power in our global food supplies. But what's the big issue? If the GMOs are said to have greater yields, it improves food quality and nutrient contents, aren't the corporations benefiting the world? Despite those advantages, the underlying fact is GMOs are mainly produced by capitalistic corporations who always aims to make profit, and any other function of a commodity is of lesser importance. They will always aim to make profits that are greater than what they invested, and this is a matter of economic life and death, rather than actual life and death. Then how can we rely on these corporations for food security when there's a clear conflict of interest? They are known to cut corners and carry immoral acts, and this just furthers public distrust and general anxiety on GMOs. Another socio-economic issue with GMOs is the predatory aspect of enforcing patents on farmers. A clear example of this is the 142 infringement suits against 410 farmers in the US by Monsanto. Out of all these cases, they made $23 million in compensation. In the famous case, Bowman versus Monsanto, Monsanto stated that without a protection of their patents, their business interests are in danger and will have no incentive to invest millions into the development of GMOs. In the end, these corporations are just looking to exploit the less wealthy by making them reliant on the GMO seeds if they want to stay competitive in the market. They have also made this possible by using genetic use restriction technology, GURT, in seeds, or also known as terminator technology. These seeds will produce crops that create infertile seeds, hence farmers will need to purchase new seeds each season.
In the following, I will introduce some alternatives to GMO that will ensure crop production and food security in line with sustainable development approach. To ensure crop production without GMO, we have to transform current food production system into sustainable agriculture. Organic farming is one of the agricultural systems that is fully consistent with sustainable development approach. It is an agricultural production management system that uses no chemical fertilizers, pesticides, or GMOs. Instead of using chemical fertilizers, organic farmers use biofertilizers such as crop residue to enhance soil fertility. The use of biofertilizers prevents fewer risks to water resources than the use of conventional agricultural chemicals. A study in Europe concluded that organic farming generally has lower rates of nitrates infiltration than conventional agriculture. It replaced the needs of GMOs that were designed to reduce fertilizers use. Organic farming also produces food products with less uncertainties on health when compared with GMO. Various sustainable agricultural practices can also be integrated into the farming system. The key practices include crop rotation, growing a series of different types of crops in the same area in a sequence seasons. It reduces soil erosion, improves soil fertility, and increases crop yield. In addition, crop rotation mitigates the buildup of pathogens and pests that often occur when one species is continuously cropped. It replaces the needs of pest or disease-resistant GMO. Other sustainable farming practices include planting cover crop, reducing tillage, agroforestry, integration of crops and animal production. Aside from organic farming, aquaponics, urban agriculture, and precision farming can also be the alternatives to GMO. Aquaponics, for example, can reduce freshwater depletion associated with irrigation, while it's encouraging sustainable food production practice, which in turn reduce the freshwater consumption in countries facing water stress. The use of aquaponics can maintain crop production in arid regions without the use of drought-resistant GMOs. In terms of food security, we knew that GMO can be a solution to feed the growing population as they increase food supply. Yet, is food insecurity nowadays really caused by insufficient food supply? For the past 2 decades, the rate of global food production has increased faster than the rate of global population growth. According to the FAO, the world produces more than 1.5 times enough food to feed everyone in the world, and yet there are still hunger all over the world. The key factor of food insecurity is not scarcity, but poverty and inequality. Therefore, instead of using GMO to increase food production, we should focus more on better distribution, through improving people's physical and economic access to food products. Besides, to encourage sustainable development without the use of GMO, transformation of current food consumption pattern is required. To be more specific, global diet should shift from meat-based diet to other sustainable diets, such as food products from microalgae, cell-cultured meats, or even insects. The shift to sustainable diets can potentially feed the growing population without using GMO and help achieve sustainable development.
To summarize, even now there are few benefits of GMOs like quality and production improvement, as well as reducing the use of chemical, but issues in governance, allergenicity, and loss of biodiversity and social problems like predatory patenting. Profit comes before anything. This all shows a necessary role in sustainable development for GMOs. In addition, alternatives to GMOs suggest we have better options in organic farming, aquaponic, urban agriculture, and precision farming. GMOs indeed can be a solution to feed the growing population as they increase food supply, but the global food distribution equality is the puzzle we should focus on solving. In conclusion, GMOs are not necessary for sustainable development. However, it can be supplementary to sustainable development if the current issues are remedied.